As we mentioned earlier, the most important political meetings of the year in China, the Lianghui, or two sessions, are taking place here in Beijing this week. These are the annual plenary meetings of China's highest legislative and advisory bodies, the NPC and the CPPCC respectively. The NPC, the National People's Congress, functions essentially as China's full parliament, making laws and coming up with policy. And recently, Bloomberg used figures from the Hurun list. That's a respected recorder magazine, in fact, as well, of who's who amongst China's rich elite, and it also tends to chronicle their luxury lifestyles. And they used those figures to calculate the wealth of the more affluent members of the legislature, the NPC. The results were quite astounding. They showed that the 70 richest deputies of the NPC had a cumulative wealth of around $90 billion, around 13 times more than the combined net worth of all 660 top officials in the three branches of the United States government. That was a meager $7.5 billion. Indeed, the richest US lawmaker, Darrell Issa, with a fortune of around $700 million, would only be ranked number 40 on the list if he were in the NPC. And the contrast is even starker when you consider that per capita income in China is about 1/6 that of the US level. So, how do everyday Chinese people feel about this rather incredible disparity? And what are their impressions of the deputies at the NPC? Well, our reporter Esther Deng hit the streets of Beijing to ask just that.
What's your impression of the deputies to the NPC?
Usually, they are model workers, or those who can represent the interest of the public.
Deputies to the NPC? Well, they're rich people, of course, because they can buy the title.
Well, for me, the deputies are definitely those who have excellent qualities and work hard. And I feel some of the deputies really think about ordinary people.
I don't know who they are, but I do know that they can't represent us since we never had the chance to vote for them.
Well, of course, not everyone can become a deputy to the NPC. I guess there are lots of requirements, and usually only civil servants can be chosen. I really don't know, and it has nothing to do with us ordinary people anyway.
So how do you feel about the fact that the richest deputies in the NPC are much wealthier than their counterparts in the US?
Well, of course, Chinese officials are richer than American officials because in China, nobody supervises them, because in fact, nobody dares to supervise officials.
I don't believe it. We can't believe whatever the media tell us. I don't believe this at all. In my opinion, only really excellent people can become deputies. And basically, I think the two sessions is something good for us ordinary people.
Well,
I think these Chinese officials either are involved in graft or accept bribes. Personally, I would expect the American officials to be richer than Chinese ones. But in reality, it's the opposite. And that's because we have so many corrupt officials.
Well, to be honest, we don't really care about this kind of news, but I do feel this reflects the huge gap between the rich and poor, especially in Beijing. But as ordinary people, what can we do then?
Well, Chinese officials have advantages in terms of gaining wealth, so I'm not surprised at the figures at all.
I feel it's inevitable. We know about the Matthew effect, right? As society develops, wealth is controlled by a smaller number of people. It's the property of capital. Just as Karl Marx said, capital is always profit-driven. So for me, it's quite normal. I don't think people should hate the rich so much. And I feel our government has noticed the importance of the fairness and distribution of wealth and is trying to find solutions.